Up shortly. Good evening and welcome to the May 20th, 2013 Lowell Planning Board agenda. On our agenda tonight we have minutes for approval. I'll skip over to those because we do have a matter here for old business, which is an amendment to to prior approval at 130 John Street, known as the Boot Cotton Mills Phase 2. The Lowell Planning Board will hear a request for Nobis Engineering, Inc. on behalf of Boot Mill Developer, LLC, to amend the approved site plan with two proposed revisions associated with the transformer and the generator that have been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. May we hear from the applicant, please, sir? Okay.
B-A-U-M-M-E-R for the record, with Nobis Engineering, 585 Middlesex Street, right here in Lowell. And may I present my plan? And
Sure.
a couple.
If you would, please. Thank you.
I appreciate the board's time here this evening. There are a number of additional plans that we're providing here to give the board members a little bit of perspective of where the site plan was when it was approved in 2011, and a couple of the modifications that have been made during the building permit and inspections process that we have before you. And the four items, there were two in the original letter, and then I've had a couple of conversations with Mr. Clausen, and he suggested that we bring them up while we're here and then see what the board would like to do. So the first is that a transformer pad has been added to the plan. National Grid determined after the permit was issued that they needed an additional transformer in the area, and I'll show you where that is. Second item is generator pit. At the point in time when this board saw the plan, initially our plan was to install the emergency generator on the roof of the building. During the building permit application process, the fire department rejected that option and determined that the emergency generator needed to be located on the site. So we created an initial pit in the bank there next to the building to place the generator. Since that point in time, Lowell Historic Board has decided to weigh in a little bit and ask for some modifications to that. That's now been resolved, and so the plan we have in front of you today represents that final modification. The third item is that there are four, in the plan that you originally saw in 2011, there were 4 parking spaces in the entry courtyard, none of which are being used to satisfy the parking requirements for the project. All the parking requirement is being provided in the John Street garage. And since that time, when we came in for permit in May 2012, we had identified that one of those would be reserved for management only. As we work things out internally in the building for the trash removal, the trash room is just inside of that spot, so we decided let's take that 4th space away. So now we're only proposing 3 lined spaces there in that courtyard. And then finally, we'd like to propose a modification in the unit count of the building. The plan that this board saw in 2011 proposed 77 residential units, and then the balance of the space in commercial office space. And as the developer discussed locations of a fitness room with the existing residents, it was determined that a better location for that fitness room, rather than being on the third floor, was to move it down onto the ground floor in the commercial office space. And I'll go over the details of that. So we would like to propose that the space that was the fitness room be converted to an additional one-bedroom apartment and bump the unit count up to 78. So walking through the plans, the first 11 by 17 couple of documents represent the copies of the original plan that you saw in 2011. And the areas of note are that just outside of the one stair tower entrance here in the upper courtyard, you'll see that it was just a bank of grass going down to the building, and there's an existing transformer shown over here adjacent to mill number 8 and 9. And that plan also shows the 4 parking spaces in the entry courtyard. If you then advance a couple of drawings, so if you go 3 drawings in, you'll see a cover sheet from the May 25th, 2012 drawings, and you'll see then drawings C1 and C2 represented there. That represents what was approved by the building inspector at the time of the building permit application. And what you'll see is that at that point, we added the generator pit just to the left of the one entryway in the upper courtyard. And at that point in time, the 4th parking space down here in the end of the entry courtyard was designated management parking only. If you go an additional set in, you'll see a little revision block up here in the right that's a single revision that says generator and transformer pads for April 22nd. That identifies what we've now completed as the final design of the generator pit with historic. So it's a little bit larger, but it's still set in place and down into the slope. And then it identifies the additional transformer pad that National Grid has requested be installed. And it's in line with the existing transformers that are in that particular area of the courtyard. And then finally, as it relates to the site plan, you'll see another revision date of May 14th up here on the right-hand side. The generator pit and the park and the transformer pad are still shown there, and you'll note that we've changed that to a no parking sign, and we identified the sort of fire lane or no parking zone striping to go all the way across what was that 4th parking space there in the entry courtyard. And the last item, in terms of where that existing additional unit was created, there's a little key plan on the right-hand side of that architectural drawing. Let me back up onto the larger scale. So basically, we're talking about this area right here on the 3rd floor of that building. I think I got that the right spot. So we have the entry courtyard, this inner enclosed courtyard, and on the 3rd floor, this is where we're proposing to add that additional unit.
While you're talking about that, so then where would you put the fitness room? Can you move
The
it from there to where?
the fitness room moved to the ground floor in the central area of, I believe it's Mill 5.
That's where the other one was gonna be tonight, so you're switching those off, okay.
It was going to be here, and now it's down here on the,
So I figure when you're addressing that, you can tell us where that went, okay.
yes.
Okay.
The architect's still working on a drawing of the details of that. Otherwise, that's how fresh that particular issue was, and that's why it wasn't included in the letter. So that I don't have the liberty of showing that plan. I'll
Okay, I was
be
just
happy
curious.
to
Yeah, I mean, if you're moving that
provide
to
that
where-
when it's ready. So this wall here represents the view out into that inner courtyard on the left-hand side of the drawing. And then there's a little ramp down in grade here between some of the interior building elevations. And this new apartment sits in this location here. So it's a bedroom, living, dining, and kitchen and bathroom. So that's essentially the revisions that we're asking the board to consider approving as we finalize the design here of the project, and happy to address any questions.
Okay, before we start, I'll ask, Swazi, does planning and development have any comments? I spoke with Aaron briefly today, but I don't know if you have anything to tell the board, or any concerns or questions?
Once the architectural plan is developed, if it can be shared with the office, that'll be great. The other thing was maybe a letter from the garage confirming that so many spaces will be allocated for this building.
I actually have a copy of the original letter.
I think if I remember correctly, back in, it was sometime in 2011, you said we approved this, right?
I believe it's November of 2011 was the,
I think at that time, I think we had a little bit of, yeah, okay. I think we had a little bit of talk that night, if I remember correctly, about those 4 parking spaces to begin with, and how they were going in and what we need them for and everything else. And at the time, I believe the response was that you didn't need them to meet the parking requirement.
that is correct. They're really just there as a convenience for the residents so that they have some temporary spots.
And I think you were gonna limit the amount of time people could park there, drop their stuff off, come in and move, if I remember correctly?
That is correct. That'd be a part of their lease requirements, so that when they've got groceries or something like that that they need to load in, they can pop in there for a little while and then move the vehicle back over to the
Yeah, 'cause
garage.
I know the talk was that, it wasn't a permanent spot, it was a temporary spot, and management would be parking right next to them, they'd keep an eye on it and everything else, okay?
That's
I recall
correct.
that, yeah.
That's correct.
I know at that time, it didn't, those parking spaces, you didn't need to meet the requirement because you had the letter, but those were extras, and they were just there for the convenience of the occupants to move things in and out quickly.
That is correct. So the parking letter from the parking authority, or the parking department, identifies the need for 77 parking spaces. It also goes on to say that there's an additional 30 to 35 commercial parking spaces available in the garage. So essentially, we'll just swap one of those out for a residential.
And so, what was the minor change for the Lowell Historic? That was to adjust the generator pit?
That was to adjust the generator pit. So the final details, there's a couple of 8.5 by 11s that we included in the package and in the application.
So is that before the historic board or just the,
That was reviewed by the historic board and Steve Stoll to get those details worked out. If you compare where we were on the time of the building permit to address the fire department, you'll notice that the stairs down into the pit were shown on the left-hand side as you look at the drawing. And if you look at the final version, The stairs are on the right-hand side. It's actually a little bit larger when it's all said and done. I guess everybody wanted a little bit more clearance. It's a little closer to the building on this side, and the pit itself is a little bit larger, but it sits down into the hill. If you look at these couple of sections that were provided both in the with the original letter and what I handed out this evening, it shows how the generator the pit is set down in grade, so that the primary concern from a historics viewpoint was that as you're looking down into the courtyard here, you're not going to notice that equipment is sitting there.
Right.
It's because it's down below grade.
And just to back up a little bit, I know in the transformer pad, National Grid said you needed it after you get the permit. I mean, we're familiar with that. They've done that to a couple of our sites. One was the Coalition for Better Acre. They went to build it all, and then the last thing they come in and said, they told us we need it now. We couldn't get approval ahead of time. They won't address it. They wait till we build it. Then they come in and say, this is where it's going. And we're like, we have no input? No, you let it. We don't get it in there. So I understand your frustration with that. How you don't get it till after.
I appreciate that.
Because we've
we
addressed
worked
this a few
very
times,
hard
and they're like, no.
recognizing with Attorney Flood
Yeah.
this past issue here, and we pushed really very hard between the electrical engineer and National Grid, and they just don't seem to make a priority, if I can speak candidly, until after
Yeah.
you get a building permit, and then
Because
they start taking the project
the last one,
seriously.
they even asked ahead of time, can you give us a determination where you want it? And they're like, nope. Remember that one, the Coalition for the Better Acre, right over there, up the street, matter of fact, yeah. But I'm so we can understand that, because, and we've had it in one or two other places, I think, but that was the most recent one I recall, so. Any board members have any questions?
I have a couple, yeah.
He's on our historic board. One planning board member has to sit on the historic board, as well as Northern Middlesex Area Government, so we have another one there, so, and our Green Commission, so.
You have to go back, first of all, did you appear before the board?
But
In
Or
2001.
just work things out with Steve Stoll on
for the recent amendment.
I don't remember.
You know, I don't know the answer to that. The way this transpired is this issue of both the generator pit and the transformer, from a civil engineering viewpoint, were kind of resolved back in November. I think you'll notice one of those revision dates dated back to as early as November of 2012. What was still up in the air was the final design of the generator pit with Historic. I know there have been extensive discussions with Mr. Stoll and the architect out on the site as construction has moved through, looking at details. So I apologize, I don't know the answer and whether that actually came in front of the full board or not.
Is it your intent to show them these new plans? Or are you all set?
My understanding is that they're all set, because we didn't,
He has signed
we
off.
waited to hear from Mr. Stoll that there was no further issues before we actually filed this with the planning board, because we didn't want to have that situation
Okay.
come up.
The only other question I have is having a little trouble locating your transformer pad on these plans. Could you just point that out, please?
So on the 4/22/13 plan, you'll now see 1, 2, 3, 4 pads. The new transformer pad is the fourth one.
All right, so it's right there.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the other 3 transformer pads are existing.
Okay, that's it.
Jerry, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just looking at the diagram to access the generator pit, I notice you're proposing to have just 2 metal posts with chain swag rail. I'm just thinking from a safety perspective, and from this diagram, I'm having a hard time to visualize how the entire pit is accessed and protected. I mean, would it, I'm thinking even a wrought iron gate. I mean, I understand we want something that has a period look, but I'm looking at that, and it just doesn't seem very secure to me, so I'm just,
Well, as I understand, the discussions went through, a normal, or I would say a typical approach would have been to maybe put some sort of a guard fence that we would typically see as a railing on a deck or something like that here. And that was a point of contention with historic. So what was determined for a safety standpoint was to put a steel grate that's flat, sort of like a roof, over top of the whole pit.
Okay.
So you don't have a grade, a problem there. And then from a code standpoint, really just wanted to prevent people from walking down the steps into the pit. And that's what the posts and chain are intended to do, and those are deemed to be the appropriate treatment of that particular issue by historic in terms of the details here and being consistent with what else is out there.
I guess I don't want to conflict with historic. I just don't find that very providing much safety. I mean, I think a very ornate wrought iron gate might be a better treatment and still provides some, integrity to the architectural design, but it doesn't appear to provide too much safety. Now, and I understand it's almost like what you would find for a utility grid on the sidewalk where you walk right across it, I'm assuming, then with the metal covering. But is the opening to access the steers it says ship ladder, so I'm assuming it's going to be fairly steep, is that correct?
That's correct.
So my concern if somebody, went right through those chain swags and then you really you basically have a ladder going down into a hole. It just seems to me there should be a safer way of addressing that issue and still preserve the visual integrity of what Mr. Stoll was trying to accomplish here. Did you have any discussion regarding the safety of that based on way it's proposed?
Not me personally.
Okay,
no.
okay. Now, I'm seeing just the two posts and the chain swag rails. What would be on either side? I can't tell from the plans what's actually going to protect that entrance. Because I'm assuming
looks-
that's
okay.
going to be an open port going down. Is that correct? Right where the steers are?
Correct. So as I read the plan, the chain and swag are around the three legs of the rectangle at the entrance to the ship's ladder and on either side of that, but does not then go around the rest of the pit. I think part of the reason for that is the grade down to the portion of the pit that's closest to the long dimension of the building is very steep. So this grade is a 2-to-1 slope from the edge of the railroad track down to the lower area, because this was all excavated out to reopen the windows on the lowest level of the building. So there's effectively no access back around to this portion of the pit from that direction, and the grade is down low and consistent with the elevation of the floor. So if you look at the second of those drawings, you can see the dashed line that runs down there. That's the existing grade line of the slope.
Sure.
So that's why there's not a need for the rail in protection along that face of the building because it's consistent with the grade.
Would it be possible, I mean, I would look to have you rework that to come up with something that's more secure than having those, because now we're talking from the site plan, from a safety perspective, I just have some concern. We spend a lot of time with trying to protect wetlands and detention ponds, and I'm looking at this, and this is a potential just drop right down into the pit. And as a matter of fact, if some children are playing in there, you're not expecting a ladder to be right down there, and you can get right under there. So I would be more inclined to have, and again, I think some wrought iron fencing around there would be more secure than the chains, but and I'm assuming you'd have to go back to Steve Stoll to see if that's something that works, but I myself personally would look, coming out of this board, is to have something a little bit more secure on that site.
I understand.
Along that same lines, I noticed that most of the pit is covered with steel grating that is flush with the ground. Would it be possible to have another panel of steel grating flush with the ground above the stairs, which could be opened as a door? That way you don't need something around the outside of the entrance. It's covered, not visible from anywhere except directly on top of it, so it shouldn't pose too much of a, shouldn't pose a problem for historic.
Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable with the plan that's provided. That's a concern, I think, a safety concern, I think. Mr.
Yeah,
Boyle?
I'd support that. I think something should be presented that's a little more secure than that, and given Steve Stoll the opportunity to review it from a safety standpoint specifically, to make sure both areas are covered.
Didn't you say what they're saying, they put,
I understand the issue for,
I mean, the
For
question is, you know,
safety
you
is-
see a young kid come in there, he can definitely go underneath those posts, he falls down there, who's gonna find him, how long's he gonna be there, you know, and actually, it's,
and those concerns may be addressed here, and we're just not picking it up
sure,
on the plan.
you know, and then,
so-
I mean,
So let me revisit this with the architect and
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Stoll.
mean, you know,
I'd be happy to.
and I would think, we're just trying to prevent, less heartache for the applicant and everybody else there as well. I think if you're doing all this work, like even as Joe said, you put a grate on top of it, and they have to lock it to get up with it, it meets everything else, you know, you can put the grate right flush on top where you go down the stairs,
I understand. I've
you know?
made some notes.
And then if you have a safety lock on it, whoever's gonna have to do it, you know, you can still put that post there if need be, but I think you bring up a good point, I think, safety for all people, so, I don't have a problem with, addressing some way to be safe, either chaining that off up top there, like I said, a locked safety gate, or use the steel grate on top, either way, because for the historic part, where it's located on the site, and if you put the grate down, historically, who's gonna say, wow, that doesn't match the character of the neighborhood? If you're putting other grates down, you do it all there, it'd just be easy to put that slab down there on the hinges and pull it up, put it down and lock it, but, so, anything else, Joe, you have to say, or?
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions. About the relocation of the workout room. What was the space of the workout room counted as under the original permit? Was it counted towards the square footage of the commercial space?
I'd have to double check that. That would be my assumption, but there were a couple of spaces, sort of lobby spaces, community room spaces that were part of that floor plan on the interior of the building.
And they were just
And
interior common
I'm not
space?
exactly sure how those were counted in the overall square footages, so we'd have to go back and revisit that.
Okay.
I think I've got that
be-
drawn
Being on the third floor, it's possible it was just counted as interior common space, like the hallway, like the hallways.
That would be my guess, or some level of common space, yes.
Now moving it to the first floor, is this only going to be used by the residents? Or only by the residents and the office tenants who are already there?
But that would be my assumption, yes.
Okay,
Let's put it this way, that's my understanding. The spaces inside the building are for the occupants of the building, whether it's residents or the office folks.
okay, so there wouldn't be people coming here, coming just to use this space like,
From the
like a
outside?
health club?
No, no.
Okay,
It is strictly for, that I can state affirmatively.
okay,
That we're not creating a health club for people from the outside to come in and join. It's for residents and/or commercial occupants of the building.
now the space that it is going into, that used to be office space?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so that used to be counted towards the square footage of the commercial space, which was driving the numbers you needed for commercial parking spaces, and now you're taking out that much commercial space.
Correct. So then that's hence the swap there on the parking space letter, where this parking space letter was predicated on 77 spaces, and then another 30 or 35 available for commercial side. So we basically swap one of those spots out of that allocation.
Okay, so as long as we can confirm that this is not going to be a commercial facility, a commercial workout facility, then we're losing commercial space and adding a residential unit. Whereas if it was going to be a commercial facility, then we wouldn't actually be losing any commercial space while adding the residential unit. So just in order to, for the board to confirm that, to know that, and make sure we don't need any changes in the parking requirements, I'd like to see some kind of confirmation on that. I'm also a little curious about, on this letter, it says, I was not on the board at the time this was approved. It says that 30 to 35 commercial parking spaces. In meeting zoning permits, the board doesn't generally work on a range. What is do you know the number required, the number of spaces required for the commercial space under the zoning?
I don't have that information
Okay.
here at this point in time, but we'd be happy to confirm what that
Okay, yeah,
is.
just that same confirmation. How many spaces are required for the commercial, and make sure that it meets it. If it's 32, then you shouldn't be leasing 30. You should be leasing the 32 or the 35. Okay, and that was all I had.
Bob, any question? No?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question about
absolutely.
Swathi? Just the planning and development, I believe the concerns were the parking, and then the second was it the final architectural plans?
Yes, and I think it will be more for the building permit
Okay.
and more than for us, but we would like to have a copy of it.
Yes, we understand that we need to do two things for the building permit. One is we need to clarify for the building permits plans this residential unit, so that's covered and can be handled by all the inspections properly. And then secondly, the revision to that build out in the commercial space, that all has to be confirmed as well. As you may recall, the plans on file for the building permit are just shell drawings for the commercial space. So once tenants are identified and for either all or portions of that space, we still have to come back in for tenant fit-out permits for that interior work. So this initial piece for the fitness center would just be the first of several of those.
Oh, I did have one additional question. The emergency generator, its elevation, is that above flood elevation?
Yes, in this particular case, because it's the basement level of these buildings that are plus or minus right at flood elevation. So we're setting this generator up into that slope, so it's several feet above
Okay.
that 100-year flood elevation.
Well, the residential and commercial space of the boot mills is obviously not as dangerous as the Fukushima nuclear plant. Nonetheless, it's good practice to locate the emergency generators above flood level.
Any further comments? If not, I think the first motion we need is whether this is a substantial material change, and then if we find out that it is not, then we would need a motion to revise the site plan with any conditions if need be.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion determining that the submitted revisions to the plan are not substantive or material to the original approval.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition to that motion is allowed. And a motion for the revised site plan. I'm gonna make a motion regards to that gate.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the revised site plan subject to the following conditions. Confirmation that the parking requirements have been met with the revised plans. The final architectural plans are submitted to DPD, and that the board's safety concerns relative to the generator pit are properly addressed.
Just for,
And
go ahead, go ahead.
to work with the historic board staff
Yeah.
and that design of that whatever the safety concerns are, whatever physically happens should be approved by Steve and the staff.
Yeah, in conjunction with Steve Stoll
Yes,
of the
right.
Historic Board.
So what I suggest, for that last one that we talk about for that safety issue, I mean, if you go to historic, speak with Mr. Sowell and say, this is the concerns that the board had. If, I think you heard that we had either the grate here or fence it off somehow. If they come out and say 1 or 2 is preferable, if need be, one we can work with, one we can, or whichever, then if you submit which one you requested to us, we can bring it in for administrative review without you being present if you don't want to be here, if that's okay with the
Yeah,
other board
no,
members.
yeah.
So if you come back and say, we decided to put the grate down and change it, or after speaking with them, we want to put the fence, and then they say, speak with the Division of Plan and Development, this is what they recommended me to do, this is the concern the planning board had, they just want to bring it out and have historic, take a look at it. So what can we do for a safety issue to make sure that we're meeting everybody's request? And if he says, oh, we can just put the grate, you're satisfied with that, submit it back to us, and we can bring it up some night under old business and say, this is what they decided, and without having you come back in front of it, if that's agreeable.
Sounds like
to
a
make
great
a motion?
approach.
Yep.
Okay, that way it's easier for you to sort of, okay, this is what you want, come back some night, we have all these residents here, and you're like, I'm here to give you what you wanted for. So hopefully you can accomplish that without having to come back, and you can submit it to plan and development, and
Great
we can
suggestion.
put it on board there, so just address that issue, so, I think we had the motion was made by, Mr. Fischett, I think
Second, I'll second.
you seconded it, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, motion carries. Good luck, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, appreciate the time.
You get that, Swazi, any questions on the, so, if he comes back with that, you can let us know, put it in under old business, we'll take a look at it, okay? All right, thank you. Moving along, we have on the agenda, some minutes to approve, let's see, the first matter is March 4th. March 4th. I just had one question, I don't know if anybody else had any question. On page, let's see. On the second page on the back, I know the motion was made by Jerry. Number 6 at the bottom, it has, "The results of the monitoring program will be provided to DPD every blank for review." I know we said, they were gonna give it to us every 6 months for the first year, and then follow it up with annual thereafter for the following 2 years. Then the result of the monitoring program will be provided, and I think we need something every, what's that, every year, every 6 months for review? I'm not sure what it was. Do you remember, Jerry, which one
Yeah,
it was?
and I think we spelled it out up above. I think
says
actually that
6
just needs to
months?
be deleted, every,
Okay,
because we did spell it out up
so
above.
if
I
we could
think
just
that's-
delete,
First year.
"The result of the monitoring program will be provided to DPD for review," because it's inclusive in the top
Yeah,
line.
exactly.
So, if that's acceptable, could we just, do you see what we're talking about, Swansea, in that bottom part? Yeah, so it'd be number 6, 1, 2, 3, fourth one down. Actually, it starts at the end of paragraph, sentence number 3, it says, "The results of the morning program will be provided to DPD every blank for review." So if we could just
Oh, yeah.
omit that sentence, because we have it above, that it's every 6 months for the first year, followed by initial occupancy for every, annually thereafter for the following 2 years. Sure. So then it went on and said, the results should be monitored, and we didn't have a complete, see here it says, "The results we've monitored every," and there was no period in here, but see above here, we have every 6 months, and then we have it for the 2 years, so that's kind of, because that was blank, so we can just
Strike the word every.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Just-
Yeah.
delete that, okay? So that's the only comment I have, if,
Mr. Chairman, I had one on this, on the motion by myself, second by Mr. Lockhart. It says approve special permit, and then on the end of all these conditions, it has Mr. Lanahan motion and Mr. Lockhart second, and the grant a special permit again. I think one of these, the first one should be the site plan.
okay, yep,
And then the second motion by you would be for the, include those conditions for the special permit. So I would just change that,
Sure.
the first, initial motion to be the site plan approval.
do you get that, Swansea, any question on that? Okay, yeah, because the second one was a special permit, okay. Anybody else have any questions on the March 4th? If not, we can
I have one.
receive a motion to approve
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the March 4th, 2013 Planning Board minutes,
as amended,
as amended.
okay?
Second?
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye. Chair votes yes. Moving along to the April 1st one. I didn't see anything on those. Anybody have any comments on those? If not, I'll make a motion that we approve the April 1, 2013 minutes.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Any opposition? That those pass. The last one is the April 18th. I did have one little small thing. And I did speak with Mr. General, who couldn't be here tonight. On the motion on the back page, motion, Mr. Generman, and seconded by Bob, second the petition, the city council amend the zoning ordinance to change the district. I think what the motion was, and I know I spoke about this with Jerry just briefly at the last meeting, because they were on for our meeting last meeting, and I forgot about it at the end of the meeting, so next day I mentioned to Joe to put off it today. And then when I spoke with Steve about it, 'cause I know we had a long, we thought about, for the city council to consider the zoning ordinance change, and not just to amend it to that, to
Yeah.
consider the change.
Yeah.
Because I think,
That's
we
right.
talked about it, I know, Bob, you
Yeah.
seconded this. The fact was, if it goes to a subcommittee meeting, that people would have the input, so it's more like for the, not that we would petition the counseling ourselves to have them do the change, but have them consider the change. And I know by speaking with Mr. Genman today, I think some other topics have come out about what type of zone would be more appropriate on that Roger Street thing, and he was gonna get back to, I think, Aaron on it today and speak with the neighbors about it.
Steve had a phone conversation with Aaron, and Aaron is trying to have a discussion with Adam.
Right.
And after that, I'm pretty sure the whole plan, he's planning to contact the whole planning board. So hopefully for next meeting, we
Okay.
might have a discussion.
So they're gonna talk about that, so I think if we can,
Okay.
make it, have the city council consider
To
the
consider
zoning
the
ordinance.
zoning ordinance to change?
Bob, do you remember that as the second, that detail?
Sure.
I mean, 'cause we didn't say to have them go for this.
Yeah, you're right, I remember that fine.
Yeah, and we said, you know, let the
remember that.
council consider if this is appropriate, because I think some of the things we had was, you know, how's it gonna affect the business district there without having their input? You know, and obviously, those things, you know, it's a balancing scale between neighborhood and businesses and what's good and where it devolves in the city, and a city this large, you know, we want a lot of those businesses coming right off the highway, coming down a commercial Route 38. So
Sure.
I think without having that input, it was more to have them consider it. So,
I think,
if we can make that motion, just to have the city council consider the zoning
Sure.
ordinance change.
What Aaron informed me was, he would like to have a discussion with Adam and then, get confirmation from the board that with, looking at the TMU zoning, we are looking at including multi-residences too.
Okay.
So that's something, they wanted to make sure the board is comfortable, that.
And I know when I spoke with Steve this afternoon, he said he had no problem speaking with the neighborhood, he'll get back to them on that and try to set it up, and, because hopefully, he was saying, you know, a lot of this could come out if it goes to the city council, they refer it to the subcommittee meeting. And then you'd have more input from other people instead of just, neighborhood, you get the balance and effect from the businesses as well. So the only thing I'd have is, instead of, use the word amend, to consider. So, if anybody else have any corrections on those? If not, I'd make a motion to approve those as amended. Motion made in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye?
That completes the minutes. We don't have any other things from, notice in Bud in Town. Does any of the board members have any follow-ups? On anything from the boards they're on
I
at this
just
time?
want to acknowledge the efforts of the historic board staff and the administrator in staging another successful Doors Open Lowell, beginning last Thursday evening with the presentation of preservation awards at the museum. Right through the weekend, Friday night and Saturday, there were buildings all over Lowell that were open, and it was really a very successful program because of their efforts.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, if not, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. The motion carries. We are adjourned, and thank you, everyone.